Hey, what's up, you guys? It is Makon Jovu here, and I know a lot of us have questions about the new vaccine that just came out in regards to the coronavirus. And I wanted to bring in someone who has tons of experience, over 20 years in this industry, Dr. Victor Moyo, who's also a physician, and he also works in drug development research. Dr. Moyo, good to have you. How are you today?
Doing well. Thank you, Marco, and thank you for inviting me.
Of course. All right. So let's talk about the hot topic here. People want to know about the vaccine, and specifically, how did scientists come up with the vaccine so quickly?
Well, Marco, typically the process of making vaccines or any drug for that matter takes years to get to a point where it's deemed to be safe enough to give to people. Here, in this case, there was a convergence of factors. First of all, there was a pandemic, which is a major problem. It had brought the economy and the health of globally to a halt, essentially. So there was an overwhelming desire from the public standpoint to do something, governments included. And that's not always the case. So that was the first case. And then, fortunately, as it turned out, because one of the challenges when you're developing vaccines, you need to understand the virus or the enemy that you are approaching. By January, end of January, February, in that time frame, the sequence of this particular vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, was already known. And once you know the sequence, the technology exists today that you can very, very quickly make a piece of what is called RNA. With that RNA is essentially what is used by the body to make proteins. So once that was available, the RNA sequence was generated and then put in special particles where it can then be used to teach essentially the body how to generate an immune response against the virus. But a lot has to happen because typically you need to do animal studies, you need to be able to make sure that it's safe, you need to then make sure that you manufacture enough of it so that today we're dosing people. So between the government, pharmaceutical industry, especially biotech, who's able to mobilize, and especially the resources that they were given in this case, allowed them to move very fast through that process. And the understanding was always going to be that this is not going to be perfect. We have an emergency in our hands and we need to deal with it, but make sure that what we're doing is such that we don't cut any corners, but we end up with a product that is safe and can be administered to patients.
Right.
Very fast. And so rather than doing things kind of sequentially, like we sometimes do, a lot of things were done in parallel. In a way,
so that should help people understand it a little bit, and the fact that it was done in parallel, like you mentioned animal testing and you mentioned all the other testing that was happening. So in terms of the virus being safe, right? People tend to use the argument, well, listen, cancer has been around for so long, HIV has been around for so long, and why haven't we made the same strides that we've made in regards to the coronavirus that we've made to these? Why aren't these vaccines for HIV, AIDS, and cancer available, just like the coronavirus became readily available?
Yeah, so the case of HIV in particular, and I'll single out HIV, is a particularly unique one because HIV, unlike many other viruses, just does not generate a strong immune response in the body when it gets there. So typically, our bodies are built to essentially fight viruses and eliminate them without vaccines. But sometimes in the process, when we get a virus, it takes such a toll on our bodies. In the case of HIV in particular, that doesn't happen well. Whereas in coronavirus, this you can mount a very, very strong immune response against that virus. And so that is the major reason. But I anticipate that we've learned so much in this year that we will start to see more progress, even in the more infectious diseases that we have, like HIV. Now, I don't know how long that will take, but it's going to
Yes.
come. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
listen,
Because
we
this,
can only hope that we'll continue to make those strides, Dr. Moyo. Okay,
yeah.
so let's talk specifically, hone in on the side effects, right? There's a lot of chatter and WhatsApp groups on social media, you know, on various platforms where people are talking about the potential side effects. And because you have such a deep knowledge about, you know, working in drug research development, I just wonder if you could just shed a light or give us your opinion on what the potential side effects are that you've heard about or that you know about in terms of this vaccine that's been developed.
Yeah, the side effects that have been described include pain at the injection site, which is to be expected. You are having a needle prick the side of your arm.
Right.
So pain is expected. Most of the pain is generally mild, well tolerated. Some people who get this have reported a lingering pain that's very manageable using a medication such as Tylenol, acetaminophen, or Motrin. Some individuals get a fever, others have reported headaches, others have reported discoloration at the site of injection. Overall, most of the side effects that have been described have been well tolerated. You have to keep in mind that what a vaccine is supposed to do is to get your immune system going. And in fact, what we see in what we call these side effects, actually the vaccine basically getting our immune system going so that it can be prepared to attack the virus.
So let's hone in on that for a second, Dr. Moyo, because I really want to specify. I've seen online on social media and these WhatsApp groups where people say that essentially when you take the vaccine, it's almost like you're being infected with the coronavirus. But what you're saying is it sounds like you're just building up immunity. So let's just really clarify that point. Does the vaccine give you the virus in order to fight the virus, or is it just building up your immune system?
No, in the particular viruses that the vaccines that have been approved, the actual construct is an RNA that looks like, you see those knobs outside the virus. We all have seen that picture. You
Yeah.
have those knobs,
Yes.
those proteins called the
Scary
spike
stuff.
proteins. This particular vaccine essentially is built to immunize against that spike protein. That's how it recognizes, the immune system learns to recognize the virus. There is no component of the virus in the mRNA vaccines from Moderna and Pfizer. And so you are not receiving a virus. You
You're
are
not
receiving a
getting the
piece of,
coronavirus to avoid getting it. Okay.
yeah, exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Now, there were the older vaccines where they used what were called attenuated vaccines, which are vaccines that have viruses that have been weakened. But this is not the case here.
So thank you for clarifying that, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen that and how many times people have been telling me that information. So really, I mean, when we'll talk about this a little bit later on as we wrap up, when we expect life to get back to normal. I mean, if we're talking about the latter part of 2021, really, we're not expecting this to end maybe until 2022, where everyone is covered.
Yes, best case scenario, that really is the case. And even when we have everybody vaccinated and covered, I don't know that we are just going to go back to normal, just
Yeah.
drop everything. Masks will be around with us for a while. There are many questions we still don't have a good understanding of. For example, we know that the vaccine prevents essentially the symptomatic disease, right? If you take the vaccine, it seems to be very good at ensuring that you don't get disease with symptoms. Whether it completely prevents the disease is unclear at this moment.
Got it.
Questions we still have to answer. So, from an abundance of precaution, we are going to have to proceed slowly with this one.
Oh
But
gosh.
it's
Okay.
very
Well,
optimistic. I think
yes.
we're in a much better shape than we were a few months ago. Yeah.
100%. I do have a little bit of optimism there, even though there are scary times with the numbers that we're looking at, specifically when we look at back home, right? We
Mhm.
look at South Africa and Zimbabwe, and we look at the targeted date of when they're going to get the rollout of the vaccine. Let's pivot and talk about that for a second. What is the
Right.
targeted date from what you understand in terms of when they will be able to get the vaccine?
Yeah, and to be honest, Marco, still seems, as my understanding, because I'm not directly
Yeah.
involved in that, but my understanding is that essentially through a COVAX, which is a global collaboration that includes WHO,
Hmm.
various other groups, Bill Gates, there is a desire to, by end of 2021, to have dosed, to have distributed 2 billion uh, uh, doses, vaccine to 2 billion people, end of
Okay.
2021. And that includes Africa. How exactly that's going to be done remains unclear. I do know that from my reading, South Africa is scheduled to start receiving vaccine as early as March of this year, of
Of next
2021.
year, of
Yes,
2021.
of
Okay.
2021, yes, of next year. So that's coming, but as is the case, which is very unfortunate for us in Africa, and this is where I believe we can and do need to do more. We tend to receive all of this last because we're too dependent on everybody else doing this. There should really be more that we are doing ourselves on the continent, and nothing really, well, I won't say nothing, but
No, no, but
we
I
have the
understand what you're saying.
capability to do it with
Yeah.
the right will and resources and support. It can be done. The nice thing about these vaccines is that they actually have opened up, essentially, in a sense, to me, the floodgates of possibilities in terms of vaccines. Ultimately, we should be able to make these vaccines in
I
shots
certainly hope so
in
because
Africa.
the need is definitely
Yeah.
there. And just like you said, our
Yeah.
lives have completely changed. And speaking about South Africa, there's talk of this crazy new strain, this new virus. I want to use the right terminology here, doctor. Is it a new strain or is it a new virus? Is it more deadly, more contagious? What do we know about this strain?
Yeah, lots of questions, and we
Yeah.
don't have all the answers. What we know, and it's a preliminary, is that there is a new strain of virus. And what that means is that if you look at the sequence of the virus and you look at that RNA sequence, you see that the virus has mutated and is changed this sequence a little bit. It still has this, it still looks pretty much like the same piece, but there are
Yeah.
changes in like the spike proteins that come out of it and so forth. And many of the changes are in the spike.
Hmm.
So it's the same virus. It's you'd like to call it coronavirus V2, so to speak, because it's a different a variation of the same virus doing pretty much the same thing. Now, in terms of is this more infectious? The preliminary, again, we have preliminary data, mostly from the UK, because it seems to be similar to what's going on in the UK.
Right.
It seems as if this one can infect more people than the original variant. So we
Hmm.
need to be cautious there. It looks like that is the case, but it does not seem to cause more severe disease.
Okay. That's a good point of
Yeah.
clarification
Yeah,
as
it
well.
doesn't seem that, but again, this you have to take all this with a with the understanding that this is all preliminary. We're learning every day. The good thing is that information is flowing fast
Yeah.
and freely. So as we know, we'll be able to update as we learn more. So so that's the case. The other, of course, question that comes up is: are these current vaccines that are available
Hmm.
going to be able to
Cover this new
cover?
variation. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, so again, the understanding is that based on what is known today is that they should. Now, should
Okay.
is very different from they will, because you still have to do the studies to show that it actually will be able to neutralize the virus. But it seems from what is known to date that the vaccines that are available should be able to neutralize this new strain as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, doctor. Well, that brings us to our end. I'm going to put a button on this for now. But as we wrap up, you know, I hear that you are giving us kind of news that we can be cautiously optimistic about, where you're saying it should. We're discovering new information every day. And really, my question to you is, there are a lot of people that are just these last few months, this last year has been crazy. And now that the vaccine is here, to me, it seems like I'm a little more optimistic than I've been, you know, these past couple of months. But what do you say to people that are just really nervous and feel like they don't want to take the vaccine? What is your sort of messaging to them in terms of really telling them how important it is to take the vaccine and what factors they should consider?
I think, first of all, I will say, even before we get to the vaccine, still, you know, things like masks, good hygiene, all those are very helpful in protecting us as a public, making sure we don't spread it, and also minimizing the chances that we catch it, and then avoiding a large public gathering. And all of this is going to be context dependent, because it depends on where one lives, because we're all scattered across the diaspora. So the recommendations in the US different from the recommendations in South Africa right now, which is going into full lockdown again, unfortunately. But having said all this, the vaccines, so I will say the benefits of the vaccine outweigh the risk from what we know today. So if the opportunity, it's going to be at the end of the day, a decision the one takes after making an informed, getting an education about what actually the virus does. But from what we know today, the benefit outweigh the risk, and that the vaccine is safe to take at this point. I certainly plan to take it as soon as my phase comes, so to speak. Yeah.
Okay. All right, doctor. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for explaining that in a way that is palatable and that we can understand. And hopefully, as we get information and as we get, you know, new information about what's going on with the vaccine and the rollout, hopefully we can have you back. Dr. Victor Moyo, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Marcos.
All right. Take care.
Take care.